So pretty recently I was scrolling across YouTube like I usually do, and I stumbled across this video called Forsaken, the Good, the Bad, and the Fandom. Now I like this video a lot. I'm not going to be touching on the fandom and the soul-driven love sections of the video because I think they're actually really well written. But there was one section that I really wanted to touch on because I feel like the guy who made this, shout out KipAshley, I don't think he really learned how to play the game before making the video. And what I mean by this is, like, a lot of the stuff he talks about in the bad section of his video tend to... a lot of the things he talks about in his bad section of the video are really not an issue with the game so much as they are a skill issue, as much as I hate to use that word. Now obviously not everyone has insane amounts of playtime on the game, not everyone like knows all the text obviously, but I feel like you should probably put some amount of research into the game before you decide to criticize the gameplay loop, like the title of this video suggests. So obviously no hate or malice directed at KipAshley in any way. I really like this video. I just wanted to touch on some of the very silly points he made in the video that I just found kind of funny, and I wanted to point out because I don't know.
Now the thing about these range attacks is that they only go on one plane, and what I mean by that is if you're about to use one of these range attacks and the person you're targeting just so happens to be next to a ramp or any elevated surface, they can just dodge the attack by simply going up the fucking ramp and you can't do anything about it. Like, why is this a thing? Why can't you just add aiming like any normal game?
I find this part really funny because it is so easily solved with rushing the survivor down. And what I mean by that is if you are by any sort of ramp, any sort of elevated surface where your hitbox will not end up reaching the survivor, you should simply just run at them and try to M1 them before you go for any ranged ability. This is something I actually commented under the video about, which I'll show here, but this is easily solved by just rushing down the survivor instead of trying to go for a stupid entanglement when you're obviously not going to hit them. I'm going to show some of my own gameplay here as 1x to show you what I mean by this, and show you when to actually use 1x's ranged abilities. As you can see here, when I'm starting this chase with the 2-time, I'm not wasting my time trying to go for an entanglement or a mass infection. I know he's going to be able to run up the ramp at any point. What I did right there where I shot him with entanglement was a really risky move, because if I had just done that at a slightly wrong moment, he would have been able to dodge it by getting up the ramp. And that's an example of something you don't want to do unless you're absolutely sure it will hit, like I was. Where I know he's low on stamina, I know he's not going to be able to make it to the ramp in time, and I know I'm going to land an entanglement because of how desperate he is to make it to that ramp. As you can see, after I managed to land that really risky entanglement, he immediately exits that loop point so that he can just try and get away from me because he's getting low on health. I'm catching up to him because I have more stamina, and he's just running away to any place, and he's in a more flat area. However, I don't have to even try to go for any ranged ability right here because I just have more stamina than him. And that's an example of just rushing them down instead of trying to go for style points by trying to land a risky mass infection or an entanglement. I have more stamina than him. I know I'm going to make it to him in time to get a few more hits off, and I know I'm going to win the chase. So there's no point in using these abilities at the stupidest moments possible. This chase is also a pretty good example of how to use your ranged abilities. As you can see, I whiffed an entanglement there because I thought he would run over there. And that's just an example of general dodging, so don't really pay attention to that. But one thing I try to do is land a mass infection, which actually winds up hitting because I was both able to hit the top of the loop point and also hit the bottom at the same time, so there's no chance he would be able to miss. One thing that KipAshley does in their clip where they try to land an entanglement by a ramp is not an example of how to use it. That ramp was very tall, so there was not even a chance that mass infection would be able to make it up there. So I don't know why there was an attempt to land an entanglement right there when you knew it would not hit because they have a lot more distance and a lot more speed. As you can see in this clip, I also did the same thing KipAshley did in their video. I tried to land an entanglement in a place where I was obviously not going to hit. That's just generally a bad play, and that's an example of what not to do as 1x. And the rest of this clip is just me trying to rush them, which is also a pretty good example of what to do. There's no shot an entanglement's going to hit because of the amount of difference in height. Right there, once we both reach a really flat area where there's no shot he's going to be able to dodge an entanglement, I go for that because he can't run up a ramp or anything, and he doesn't expect me to shoot there. The point I'm trying to make here is when you're using your abilities, your ranged abilities as 1x around elevated areas, you're going to need a lot of thought behind your abilities and your moves and your predictions before you try and land them. What KipAshley is criticizing here is that it is impossible to land an ability by a ramp, which is not true, because there are so many things you can do as 1x that will allow you to hit these abilities. Not just that, but also I feel like it's common sense not to try and shoot the survivor with an entanglement when they're nowhere near that entanglement. You know that's not going to hit. There are so many techs that require just an ounce of brain power in order for you to pull off, and I don't know why KipAshley did not think to touch on this when they decided to criticize this. Also, sorry if my thoughts just sound a bit disorganized and stuff doesn't make sense. I wasn't really planning on making this video, and I didn't really have the time to write a script. It's pretty late at night, so sorry if a few things don't make sense, because there's a lot of just jumbled thoughts in my head, but I'm trying my hardest. 1x is a very skill-based character. A lot of, pretty much every ability in his toolkit requires a lot of thought before you use them. You need to think a lot about what the survivor is going to do before you use entanglement. You need to think a lot before you use mass infection. You need to think a lot before you use something like unstable eye, because there's so many factors that lie into using these abilities that using one of these wrong can throw the entire match away.
The thing that pisses me off the most about this mechanic is the fact that this isn't like some super hard thing to change either, because there's already 3-dimensional aiming for Cool Kid with his ability Corrupt Nature, which literally does more damage than 1x's entanglement ability.
The point KipAshley makes here is that you should be able to shoot something like entanglement or mass infection from any direction, similar to Cool Kid's Corrupt Nature. And I find this to be a really silly point, because 1x's abilities are one plane for a reason. They are meant to be very punishing to people who don't dodge correctly. They are meant to be punishing to people who don't play right and make a mistake. If 1x's entanglement was able to be aimed at any distance, regardless of how fast it goes, it would be so OP, because the minigame can freeze you in place for up to 10 seconds depending on how hard it is, and also how annoying it is to click the pop-ups. Also makes a point that entanglement does less damage than Corrupt Nature, which I don't really understand the point. Entanglement is meant to let 1x catch up and not really do a bunch of damage itself, so I'm not really sure what the point they were trying to make there was. A lot of maps in Forsaken tend to be very flat and very 1x sided, such as Planet Voss, like you're seeing in the background here. So the featuring of these ramps in the maps tends to be a bit of a lifesaver in some chases that are really tight. These ramps are pretty scarce as well in some of the maps, so I'm not sure how this is a bad thing that you can avoid an ability by going up a ramp. Most competent 1x mains will not try and hit an entanglement when you're near a ramp. They will just instead try to rush you down because they know they're probably going to miss. The point that it's bad that you can't hit a mass infection or entanglement around a ramp is honestly a really silly point, like I said earlier, because the game would be completely killer-sided. It would be completely 1x-sided if he could just shoot upwards and still hit you.
This was done for balancing mechanics too. I just don't get that either, because it genuinely makes playing this character so much more frustrating for no reason, because there are plenty of other ways you could nerf this ability while also adding 3D aiming like longer cooldowns or slower projectile speeds, which these two abilities aren't even hit scan, by the way. You still need to be able to predict where the survivor is going to go, and if you're going against someone who's got any experience in video games, they will most likely dodge it.
I know I already touched on the whole 3D aiming thing, and I've already made my points that making 3D aiming would be OP, and it would just change up 1x's playing style way too much, and would make him too similar to other killers, or would just generally ruin the playing experience for everyone in general. I just wanted to put this in here just in case some did in the comments doesn't want to go, actually, KipAshley talks about the balancing that would be able to make this a viable option, I've already made my points. The thing that in this part that made me really laugh out loud is how KipAshley gets mad over the fact that someone who's played the game for longer than 2 seconds would be able to dodge an entanglement or a mass infection, which is really funny because I don't know why you're mad that you're gonna have to put any amount of brain power into playing 1x with his ranged abilities. If you want to play a killer where you can just turn the brain off and get free kills, you're better off with someone like Slasher. But if you're going to play a ranged killer that requires good prediction and good aim, you have to be ready to be able to predict and aim.
But they changed the already horrible hitboxes, which, and I quote, should feel better to play with. However, not only do these hitboxes feel the exact same, in quite a few cases, it actually feels a lot worse for both the killer and survivors.
Forsaken has always been a game that has notoriously bad hitboxes and notoriously bad ping boxes, as they will showcase later in the video. This isn't necessarily Forsaken's fault as much as it is Roblox's fault. There's an option in the settings where you can just turn on the ability to see your ping in Roblox. There's no third-party software or anything. So you can server hop until you get in a server with good ping that will have better hitboxes. Forsaken is doing everything they can to make sure that their hitboxes feel more fair and more comfortable for every player within the limitations of Roblox. So criticizing them for something that isn't really their fault is kinda stupid. Later in the video, KipAshley also literally mentions how this isn't really Forsaken's fault, so I'm not really sure what the point of this part is if you know it's not really something they can control.
I do get that this is partially not the developer's fault because after all, it is Roblox's servers that are held together using potatoes, wires, and thoughts and prayers. But if you're gonna say that you revamped the hitboxes to feel better, I should not be having experiences like this.
This is honestly just way too harsh on the devs for no reason. I get that Forsaken's a really big dev team and they're really popular, so nobody's probably going to be necessarily butthurt over this. But it's just objectively silly and very stupid to be criticizing the devs for trying to make their game better.
Another thing that brings down the experience for all killers is what I call stacking. And yes, I just took that term from Warzone. Stop! Don't kill me! There are two types of stacking, but I'll explain normal stacking first. Now, this isn't exactly anything the developers can prevent or fix from happening, but it is still notable, and it's when a group of people, usually friends, are all huddled up in one group and protect each other like it's their actual lives on the line. They don't do generators, all they do is just stand around together. Playing in lobbies like these are genuinely the most miserable thing you will come across when playing killer, because not only is it just boring for them to do absolutely nothing until you go attack one of them, but when you do, they all start to trail behind you and start taking hits for that person, so you can't get any actual damage in, and the round ends with you doing 25% damage to each person.
Now, I'm not sure if me or the other person in the comments who had the same opinion as me are both hearing this wrong, but the way KipAshley is talking about what they call stacking just sounds like teamwork to me. It just sounds like the team is playing an active playing style instead of doing generators and making an effort to help their team and prioritize winning the game. I'm not sure why KipAshley is complaining over the survivors in the surviving game trying to survive when that's the whole point. Literally in the description, it says that you need to survive as the survivor. It's in the name. So I'm not really sure what the point is here. Is KipAshley just mad that the survivors are making an effort to help each other, or am I just understanding this wrong? Because what it sounds like to me is that KipAshley had a few games where the survivors were playing their roles correctly and trying their absolute hardest to make sure they won. And I guess KipAshley got butthurt over that, so they decided it was an issue with the game itself and went on here to rant about it.
The second kind of stacking in-game, which is much more unbearable, is what I call class stacking. And that's when half or more of the server is playing one specific character, which can occur intentionally or just from bad luck. It doesn't matter what character this is besides maybe noob, but the worst kind of class stacking is with Builderman or Taff, because these motherfuckers got me looking around for traps like I'm deployed in Vietnam.
I guess there's a bit of a point to be made whenever there's one or more types of a support or sentinel in one server, it definitely does feel like hell to play against. But at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal, and you just kind of have to get used to it.
Another thing I would like to mention when it comes to every single killer, except for one, is how weirdly slow everyone feels. This combined with the stamina management for killer genuinely makes me feel like I'm working a 9 to 5 just for a single kill. And I think a slight buff to run and walk speed or faster stamina regen would make it so much easier to play killer, all the while not making it too easy.
No, I can't stress this enough. No, the killers do not need a speed buff. They don't need a stamina buff. They are perfectly fine as is. What happened is you didn't know how to manage your stamina and you paid the price. You do not need a speed buff or a stamina buff. It is already hard enough against skilled killers in a server. I can't stress this enough. No!
I don't think it's stated how horribly this game teaches you how to play killer. Like I mentioned before, your first 20 or so killer matches are going to feel awful, especially on Jason since he is the starting killer. I think Jason is a really fun killer, but a horrible starter because of how specifically you gotta play and be experienced with the game. And learning how to use his abilities is basically non-existent since you gotta do it in game and you're not exactly gonna be able to learn how to use them since all you're gonna be doing is failing. This problem would be fixed if there is some sort of tutorial for not just Jason, but every single killer and survivor that sort of guides you through not only how to play, but also use the abilities of that specific killer or survivor using practice scenarios.
I honestly think KipAshley has a really good point here. I cannot stress enough how hard it is to learn how to play this game. Trust me, I would know. One of the only ways you're gonna learn how to play any character in Forsaken is by watching about 10 quintillion YouTube videos. But an important point to make here is that Forsaken is currently working on a tutorial system for the game. Now that's obviously something KipAshley couldn't know because I don't even know if it was officially announced. Now later in the video, KipAshley goes on this huge rant about how much they hate Noli, which I guess is fair to say. I mean, I have an entire video about Buff Noli and how overpowered he is. He's honestly one of the best killers in the game, if not the best, so I get it. One thing they particularly touch on is how much they dislike his chase theme. As you all know, Noli's chase theme is a pretty popular meme in the Forsaken community, because, oh, I can't handle speedcore, it's too loud, no! But I feel like the amount of hate Vlad got for this song is really unjustified. Noli's chase theme is a chase theme. It is meant to make you scared and it is meant to make you stressed out. And the chase theme does just that. It is loud and it makes you stressed out. That is the whole point of a chase theme. Not to mention that KipAshley also mentions the amount of hate that Vlad got and the amount of harassment they got, and even mentions how you probably shouldn't go harass them. And then proceeds to enormously on this chase theme and probably hurt Vlad a lot more than they already have been hurt by this community. It is insane, and it is honestly kind of hypocritical.
Starting off with 2-time first, since I don't exactly have many complaints about them, the only thing I want to talk about is the crouch ability. This shit is genuinely so useless, and I have only ever seen this ability used strategically once when a player in my lobby somehow hit a backstab from much further away and then ended up dying 20 seconds later. This ability should either be reworked to do something else entirely different or just straight up removed and replaced with something else, because almost nobody is going to make themselves willingly slower for a temporarily lunge boost that is super situational.
2x crouch ability is definitely something that people tend to hate on a bit, but I don't feel like people realize its actual potential. Whenever you're within the killer's terror radius and you uncrouch, you're given a temporary speed 2 boost, which is really good for starting a chase, especially against 1x who has his unstable eye, which gives him a speed 1 boost. 2x crouch ability also, like mentioned, gives him a huge dash and launches him about like 5 or 6 feet. This can be used, one, to get a really clean stab from far away, and can also be used to get yourself away from something like, I don't know, a gashing wound, or an M1, or really any melee attack, or also dodge away from something like a spike or a mass infection. It's actually a very life-saving ability, and I don't know why people hate on it so much.
for Chance, the only two gripes I have with him are his range and hat fixability. Yeah, I'm finally talking about it. So this is a ranged survivor. His entire thing is that he can stun the killer from far away, which makes sense since he has a gun. So, tell me why the fuck is there a range limit on it? You are only able to hit the killer from around 90 studs away, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot at all. It used to be infinite, but they took that away for some reason.
Chance is generally regarded as the biggest bully out of all the Sentinels and any supports. If you've ever interacted with anyone who's ever played competitive Forsaken, you'll know that he's outright banned because of how overpowered he is. Chance's range stun is already insanely overpowered. When he was able to shoot through walls, this made him even more overpowered because there's nothing you can do about it. If there's more than one Chance in a lobby against a John Doe, that John Doe can essentially never use his spikes, and that's just normal Chance. If he was able to hit across the map, and God forbid through walls, this would make it near impossible to play against any good Chance. That was pretty much all of the criticism KipAshley had towards Forsaken's gameplay in general and most of the features. After that, they proceed to go on a whole rant about the developers, which I won't really be getting on, and I won't really be touching on any of the drama regarding the developers, because I just don't think it's something I'm really well suited to talk about. They also mentioned the anti-backshot system in Forsaken, and they say that it's kind of stupid because I guess they thought that the reason it was in there was to avoid toxicity, when in reality it was just implemented because Roblox is a kids game, and I don't think that we should be backshotting each other on Roblox. Obviously, if it's your friends, that's fine or whatever, but still. Anyways, that's about it for this video. Again, no hate directed towards KipAshley. I actually really enjoyed the video they made. I just wanted to make this video to touch on the really weird points they made about the gameplay loop that are just blatantly, you know, false or just like kind of like outlandish. I'll link their video in the description because I think all of the other sections of the video are really well written and I had a lot of fun watching them. And they make some really good points about the fandom and the developers as a whole. So I suggest you go watch that. Anyways, yeah, that's about it. Don't expect any other videos like this for a while because I don't really like making videos that talk negatively about people. I just like having fun, you know? But yeah, that's it. Peace.